Hello there, you beautiful soul, and welcome back to another Wellness Culture Talks segment with your host and founder of Cultured Society. Today, I am here with my special guest for the month of March, and hopefully, we'll be moving forward with this series of wellness talks because we need it more than ever in this time and day that we're living in today. And today, we are here to talk about self love, one of my favorite topics, and one that we really need to dive deep into today and every day, really, because it should really be a part of our everyday practice. And so I want to introduce Bonnie Moehle since if you have not joined us on these conversations yet, Bonnie Moehle is a self-realization coach in the personal development, relationship, and executive coaching arenas. She is also a published author, workshop facilitator, and public speaker. Whether you are in a role of leadership or cannot turn to your peers for any reason, or you just need somebody to help you recognize and shift the challenges in everyday life, Bonnie can help by providing a non-judgmental, supportive environment and the tools that truly impact the outcomes of your life. And Bonnie has volunteered her time during this series to give more tools because we are living really in a time where there is there tends to be a lot of narcissism around the term self-love, and I want to remind each and every one of you who is going to tune in that self-love is so much more than that, and that it's so important to recognize that in order for us to be able to love others, we need to truly be able to love ourselves unconditionally because we cannot pour from an empty vessel. And in order for us to be able to selflessly give out that love that everybody needs during this time and in our times moving forward, we need to be able to have the tools to be able to give that to ourselves so freely and with so much more ease. So thank you, Bonnie, for joining us today in this much needed conversation.
It's always a pleasure. And I love what you said about you have to fill your own well before you can actually draw from it and give to others. And it's so true. And, something else that I want to respond to based on what you said is you talked about that there's people think of self-love as something narcissistic or conceited or full of yourself. And self-love is really nothing of the sort. And just to explain the difference so that listeners have clarity, narcissism, conceit, arrogance all require external validation. Self-love does not require external validation. And I think that really is a good way to define, if I love myself, am I being conceited? Am I being arrogant? No, not if you truly love yourself, because what happens is you're no longer looking to people to validate you, and you're not pulling at anybody. Look at me, notice me, reward me, notice my accomplishments, compliment me. And those are the things that happen when we don't have self-love. But real self-love does not require any external validation. Now, it
Yes.
doesn't mean that we don't enjoy it and then it's not nice. But it's kind of like if we get it, great. And if we don't get it, great. And that's where we end up when we really love ourselves.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you said that because, it's really important for us to recognize the, it's so beautiful to be able to receive love, right? And to be able to accept it from other people because oftentimes when people are giving you compliments, it really isn't coming from a place of emptiness or even to try to blow up your head, right? It is more so I've experienced this and I know so because one of my love languages is words of affirmation. And I remember when I didn't really love myself, I couldn't give those words of affirmation to people without expecting it in return. And when you truly love yourself, and we'll go more into how you can truly
Mhm.
learn to love yourself and accept yourself more, you're able to give those words of affirmation to other people because you see them as a reflection of you. And it's like selfless. It's like you give it with no expectations of them feeding that
Mhm.
back to you. But it is always really great to receive it, because who doesn't? Who
Of
doesn't want to give
course. Yeah. And all the self-love stuff doesn't say that, it's bad to receive. It's just we don't define ourselves that way. We don't need it. And, something else that I want to say about receiving words of affirmation, when we don't love ourselves, not only is it difficult for us to give those words of affirmation, but we're not very good at receiving them either. Somebody will give it to us and we'll get a compliment or some kind of accolade, and we'll go, oh yeah, right? And then we reject it. So you have to love yourself not only to be able to give it, but also to receive it as well.
Yes, yes, it's so true. Now, Bonnie, tell us how someone who is having a really difficult time receiving love, how can we start by giving that to ourselves first without expecting that externally?
Well, there's a lot that goes into it. I think what I want to do first is maybe educate everybody a little bit on why it's so tough. The whole world, I've been in practice for 21 years, and I have had clients that have very high profile. And I have had clients from all different walks of life and socioeconomic backgrounds, and it doesn't matter. Every single person has difficulty with self-love. And why is that the case? So let's kind of focus in on the why, because I think that helps heighten everybody's awareness as to why everybody has so much difficulty with it. My umbrella answer is because we have poopy training. When it comes to self-love, we have poopy training. But really, I kind of boil it down to 5 things. And this is why we have such difficulty. One, because we think self-love is bad. Somewhere along the way, somebody told us that self-love will make you arrogant, and it'll make you conceited, it'll make you full of yourself. And so we have this idea, like we were talking about earlier, that if I love myself, that's what I'm going to be. So, oh no, I can't love myself. And, even the idea of being humble, a lot of people interpret humble as being insecure or minimizing yourself in some way. But truly, to be humble, you have to love yourself. Because humble means I don't need any external validation. I'm not walking around bragging or telling you how great I am, because I don't need to. But I have to have self-love in order to be humble. Insecure or minimizing yourself is not what humble really is. So for anybody listening who thinks that real self-love is bad, it's not bad. It is so different than what we, interpret as conceited and arrogant and so on. When we lack in self-love, we have certain kinds of behaviors that show up, like needing to be right, or becoming defensive, or taking the words of others personally when they aren't even meant that way, or misperceiving comments as criticisms when they aren't meant that way, or judging others or blaming others for how we feel. And so these are procrastinating, being needy in relationships, being unable to give love, being able to accept love. All of these are symptoms of needing to do some work around loving yourself. But the first reason I think that we have such difficulty is because somewhere along the way we were told that it's going to be a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. Okay. Second reason why we have difficulty is because we have decided that self-love is a conditional thing.
Yes.
I can only love myself when I meet these conditions, when I pass the test, when I achieve the goal, when I finish the task. Then I can love myself, right? But then what do? We live like a roller coaster ride, up, down, working toward the goal, Got it. Then we feel happy for how long?
We don't.
Yeah. And we might have like 2 minutes, 1 hour a day where we feel good, and then right back down. And then, okay, what's the next goal I can achieve so that I can feel self-love? And so this is what we do. And we're never happy. because we're always up and down and up and down, and we're constantly judging ourselves until that one little short moment when we met the goal and we feel good, and then right back down. Now I've got to find another goal. And a lot of my clients will say to me, well, if I don't have these goals that I have to reach in order to be happy, then maybe I won't do anything. In other words, I need these conditions that make me feel happy for 2 minutes in order to be productive in my life. And so this is kind of the mind or the ego's argument for why you have to have conditions all the time. But that is not true. And I can tell you from experience, because I didn't used to love myself. I was so hard on myself many years ago. But what happens when you love yourself is you are automatically productive. You
Yes.
feel more productive, you feel more inspired, you feel more creative. And so you don't need to meet a condition in order to feel good about yourself and then be proactive. You already feel good, and because you feel good, you are naturally and effortlessly proactive. So if any of you are worried, like if I don't have these conditions, then I won't be productive, forget it. It's not true. Okay. Third reason we have so much difficulty is because we were taught to focus on the wrong thing.
Yes.
Focus on your faults. That'll make you better. And so instead of focusing on our strengths and our value, instead of focusing on what we have rather than what we don't have, and what we do rather than what we don't do, we're constantly beating ourselves up. But remember, whatever you think about is what you become. If you beat yourself up, you're not going to get better. You're just feeding more I'm not good enough into your subconscious, which then translates into how you behave and perceive and so on. So we're going to talk a little bit later about how to shift focusing on the wrong thing, okay? The fourth reason is because we're looking for love in all the wrong places. We're looking outside of ourselves. If I would just get that compliment, if I would just win that award, if my boss would just give me a good review, if my husband would notice me more, if I had a bigger car and people admired me, and it can span from, compliments and things that you get from other people to material possessions. Some people think if I had more money, then I would love myself and feel happy. But none of that is true, because none of that actually cures what's going on inside, which is I've got to love myself from the inside out. Getting self-love from the outside does not give you self-love, because if it did, you'd already have it.
Right.
I mean, think about how many times we get compliments in our lives. If that external thing could give us self-love, we'd already have it, right?
Yep.
So we have to stop looking outside of ourselves and start looking internal. And by the way, just like I mentioned earlier, getting those things, I'm not saying they're bad. They're great. I love it when I get a compliment. But where you want to be is in a place that if you don't get one, you are still okay.
Absolutely.
And you still feel well about yourself.
Mhm.
Okay? So that's a fourth reason. We're looking outside. When we look outside, we become like little hamsters on a wheel. What can I get next? What can I get next? What can I get next? So that I can feel good again. We don't want to be hamsters on a wheel. I don't know what, that term we're living in the rat race?
Yes.
I don't know if that's what they mean, but that's what I think it means. The fifth reason is because we don't know who we are.
Mhm.
Who we are is created in the image and likeness of God.
Absolutely.
Who we are is an expression of God, which means that who we are is already whole and complete and everything that we could possibly want or need, all self-contained within us. So, you could say, well, that sounds really good, Bonnie, but how come I don't feel like that? Why? Because what are you thinking? And instead of identifying through the practice of being in presence, instead of identifying with who you are, we're identifying with what we think. And what do we think? I'm not enough, and that was really stupid, and I shouldn't have done that, and they're not going to like me, and I should have, could have, would have, and why did I do this? And right? So we've got to stop that kind of mind identification. So far, are you with me? I want to give you a chance if you want to talk, Rebecca, because I can just talk.
No, this is beautiful. And just like we've gone back to in every conversation that we've had so far, just like you said before I pressed record, is that we keep going to the concept of presence and
Mhm.
recognizing that we are enough just as we are, and that we were created and are created in the image of God. And therefore, because God is perfection and God doesn't create anything that's not perfection, every single one of us is that. And so, it's so easy to compare ourselves to others, especially when we live in a society that we're infiltrated with lots of information that comes from fake news majority of the time, publications that are featuring women or men that it it's not really the reality of what every human looks like, right? And everybody has an individual way that they look. And even though we are a reflection of God, we're also uniquely designed for our own specific blueprint, right? And we're supposed to look different,
Mhm.
and it's so
Yes.
beautiful to be different and to be able to accept that while you're in the present moment and really accepting yourself for who you are. And I'm with you, Bonnie, because I actually struggled with self-love my entire life because I was always perceiving love as something that it wasn't. And
Mhm.
I was always trying to measure up to the next best thing, to the next
Yeah.
person, materialistic possessions, to the money, like all of the things that did not matter. And when I
Well,
really,
yeah, they don't give you the self-love. That you might feel good for a little short-term period, but it's not what we're really looking for, which is an internal thing.
it is, and it
Mhm.
really, like for me, it really clicked when, I mean, it took me a while to really get to this place because, it was a lot of programming that I needed to
Mhm.
undo and to really rewire my brain when it came to the way that I even perceived myself.
Mhm.
And really understanding that we're already perfect the way that we are, and that when we accept ourselves as we are is when the change really happens. Even when
Mhm.
it comes to external transformation, like all the things that we're trying to achieve physically, it just naturally happens when you just accept yourself as is.
So true. And I love that word too, accept yourself. When I first started my own journey, I was beating myself up all the time. It's like, oh, Bunny, you know this. You shouldn't be behaving like that. And of course, all that did was add lighter fluid to the fire
Absolutely.
and make it worse. It didn't make it any better. And it was when I learned how to accept myself and be kind and loving and gentle on myself that I was able to transform. So, yes, everybody out there, please be kind and loving and gentle to yourself. Do not beat yourself up. I promise you, beating yourself up cannot make you better. It just makes you repeat the same patterns over and over and over again. So, okay.
It does. Go
So,
ahead.
what do we do about all of this? So, the practice of presence, of course, is always so beneficial because you get out of the mind completely and you're not relating to this ego's idea of who you are. But doing some reprogramming of the subconscious is also extremely helpful. And so, that's what we're going to focus on today. And so, what I like to ask people to do is just make a list of 5 things that they love about themselves. And I will tell you that I have worked with a lot of people over the years who can't even think of 2. But so if you're one of those people out there that say, well, I can't even think of 2 things I love about myself, think about maybe your best friend or your mom or somebody that does love you and what do they love about you? And see if maybe that's something that you can love about yourself. And it doesn't have to be, I perform miracles. And it doesn't have to be, I'm the top producer at my company. I want it to be simple things like the essence of who you are. I'm kind, I'm empathetic, I am loyal to my friends, I'm a good listener, I care about other people's feelings, I am non-judgmental, I allow a space for others to share, I love to learn and grow. And these are the kinds of things that you want to love about yourself. And yet what we will try to reach for are things like, I'm the top producer at my company. No, who are you? Who's the essence of who you are? The thing that nobody could ever take away because it's just in you. And when I think about this, it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember, or Rebecca, you weren't in Arizona at the time, but there was this police officer, I'm going to say 20 years ago, named Jason Sheckerly or something like that. And he had gotten severely burned. Maybe it was a firefighter, actually, a firefighter. He got severely burned to where his face required many, many surgeries, and he never really looked like he used to. He looked a little bit scary, actually. And so what he did is he went around to grammar schools to demonstrate to children that even if you look like that, you're still the same person on the inside. And so I want everybody to relate to, who am I on the inside?
Absolutely.
Am I empathetic? Am I caring? Am I the nice person? Am I a good friend, loyal listener, whatever? Am I a good problem solver? Am I creative? Who are you? And write it down. 5 things you love about yourself. But then every day, 5 times a day, I don't know why five is my magic number, but it is. Every day, 5 times a day, tell yourself those things. Say it with feeling, say it like you mean it.
Mhm.
It's amazing what happens when you start focusing on who you are. Now, it's a discipline,
Yes,
and it's an important discipline, and here's why it's important. Self love is like a muscle.
yes.
If years ago, my sister had a cast on her leg. She had to wear it for 8 weeks. She broke her leg. When she took it off, her leg was like skinny. And the medical term for that is it had atrophied.
Mhm.
But the muscle hadn't gone anywhere. As soon as she started to work on it and walk on it, it came right back. So self love is very much like that. It's in us, it's our birthright, it's who we are. It's just that for so many of us, our self love is in atrophy. And so we need to give it a workout. And so the whole idea behind not only writing out what you love about yourself, but many times a day telling yourself what you love about yourself is so important because we've got to work that muscle out. And oftentimes when I have people write down that list, I say, well, how many times a day do you tell yourself those things that you wrote on your list? None, maybe once. Okay, if my hands are scales, and on this side is how many times a day you're critical of yourself, and this side is how many times a day you're loving and complimentary of yourself, which one has more weight on it? They always have more weight on the negative. So it's like, okay, look at where you're at in terms of your mindset and your focus. Why do you think you feel the way you feel? Because you're putting all of your attention on negatives and beating yourself up and things that you don't like, instead of putting attention on who you are and how you show up in this world and what you have and what your strengths are. So this is why this exercise becomes so important. I do also often have people say to me, well, what about my kids? How can I help my kids feel more confidence so that they don't end up at 40 like I am talking to you? Should I tell them every day what I love about them? And it's interesting because the answer is actually no. And I'm not saying that I don't think you should tell your kids what you love about them. Of course you should. But what's more powerful in addition to that is ask them every day what they love about themselves. When it comes from the inside out versus the outside in, it's a completely different result. I have clients who my mom told me how amazing I was my entire life, and I'm still not feeling it because it's not coming from you, from internally, from you recognizing who you are. So this whole focus 5 times a day, tell yourself what you love about yourself. It's about you internalizing and knowing and owning who you are and what you have and what your essence is and what you're capable of. So really focusing on that. Okay. Any comments or questions?
I'm so glad that you said the five list of what you love about yourself because I actually started doing this years ago when I was reprogramming my subconscious mind about myself. And I actually started with what I was grateful for. And it really, and I would do it at the end of the day
Mhm.
whenever, I always remembered that I had to write what I was grateful for at the end of the day. And so I would always focus my attention on doing things that I knew I was going to be grateful for. And that goes back to the state of presence, is that when you are present, you're more appreciative of everything that's happening throughout your days, and you're able to attract more of that. I like to say that gratitude is it literally is a magnet for miracles, because you're able to really appreciate that. One, the fact that you're breathing alone is a miracle in itself. And
Mhm.
that when you're able to appreciate things as you go, literally, like that's how you're programming yourself to always see things from that perception. And I even used to, like, I went as far as writing stuff on my mirror. Like, and I would write words of affirmation. I am beautiful. I am kind. I am enough. I am amazing. And I actually worked with kids because I was a nanny. Like anytime that I was kind of transitioning from my corporate experience, I loved to go and work with children. I had the opportunity to work with over 50 families throughout my career.
Wow.
And that was actually one of the practices that we implemented with the children. First thing in the morning is words of affirmation. So I would say the word of like the phrase of affirmation, and then they would repeat after me the I am, and it was coming from them. And it was, you were empowering them to do the words of affirmation. So when they were speaking it from their mouth,
Yeah.
that's how they started to really believe
Yes.
that that was true for them.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. And with regards to gratitude, because I agree with you, gratitude, we've talked before about my practice of gratitude, and how important I think it is. But you can also do your self-love practice 5 times a day in the form of a gratitude.
Yes,
Like, I am so grateful that I am such an empathetic person. I am
absolutely.
so grateful that I have the knowledge that I have. I am so grateful that I am such a good problem solver. And if you add to that gratitude, why? I'm so grateful that I'm a problem solver, because when anything comes on my way, I know that I can work through it, which even empowers that gratitude more. So those are some things that you can do in a way that you can do it. Sometimes people say, oh my gosh, Bonnie, I'm so busy. How am I going to fit it in 5 times a day? Easy peasy. You can do it when you're on the toilet. You can do it in the shower. You can do it when you're driving in the car. You can do it anywhere. So I always say make a list of when you're going to do it, because then you're more likely to remember to do it. So I do it every time I brush my teeth. So for me, that's 2 to 3 times a day.
Yes,
Every time I brush my teeth, as soon as I'm done, tell myself what I love about myself. Okay, so there's 2 or 3 already. I do it every time I get in the car to go somewhere, every time I drive back. There's 2 more. So it's so easy to fit it in. I do it every time I'm in the shower. Okay.
absolutely.
So yeah, if you have kind of a list, here's when I'm doing it. When you're in those situations, you'll probably be more likely to remember to do it.
Absolutely. And I encourage everyone to carry a journal, whether it's a gratitude journal, an intentions journal, an affirmations journal, goals journal, whatever type of journal you want to call it. It's so important to have that, or even like the notes in your phone, because I got myself to a place where it was like it literally was in it was programmed into my subconscious mind to always do it. And that doesn't come overnight, because oftentimes we have years and years and years of programming where we're at that stage in our 30s and 40s, and we've never given ourselves that time to do it. But it's
Right.
never too late. It's never too late, because at any given point, we literally have the opportunity to go back to the purity of our childlike essence if we just take the
Oh,
intentional time to do it.
I love that. And the Bible says, so it is written, so it is done.
Yes,
So when you write it down, you become a creator. It becomes that much more powerful. So, okay, the other thing that I always recommend people do, I call it practice recognizing your own magnificence.
yes.
Now, this is a little different from the other exercise or the other practice, in that practice recognizing your own magnificence is more of like in real time. What you're going to do is catch and celebrate yourself when you are doing things that are nice or kind or caring or creative. So you're catching and celebrating them in real time. So for example, Rebecca, if you went to the grocery store and you were standing in line and the guy behind you had one item and you had 100, what would you do?
If the guy had
If
one
the guy behind you
and
had
I
one
had,
item and you had 100, what would you do?
oh, I would let him go before me.
Okay, of course you would. So that is one of those moments when you catch and celebrate. Wow, you know what? I let that guy go in front of me. That was so thoughtful of me. I really love that about myself. Now, it might sound like you're being arrogant, but it's between you and you. So there's nothing arrogant about it. Remember, arrogance requires external validation. This is you reaffirming to you who you are in real time. If you're walking down the hallway in a building, somebody drops a piece of paper and doesn't notice it, what do?
Pick it up and you give it to them.
That's right. And then you catch and celebrate. But I want you to catch and celebrate everything. I put lotion on my hands. I'm caring for my skin. I love that about myself. I ate something healthy as a snack. I love that about myself. I came up with a solution to a problem that somebody was having. I love that about myself. And so catch and celebrate. And I want to tell you a little story about this. So years ago, I was working with this beautiful woman who was a wonderful mother and a beautiful wife and a good friend. But her training, her poopy training, had taught her to focus on her faults and not focus on the negative, because that'll make you better. And I'm looking at her and I just see this beautiful woman. And I thought to myself, how can I help her see what I see? And it's amazing how when you say that, put it out there and you get present, the idea pops right in your head. And so I looked at her and I said, I have an idea. It's an experiment. I've never done this with anybody before. Would you be willing? She said, okay, yeah, sure. I said, all right, for the next week until I see you again, I want you to catch and celebrate all the little good, positive, powerful, helpful, loving, loyal, honest, creative things that you do. Catch and celebrate. So she said, okay, I'll give it a try. A week later, she comes back. She's got a big smile on her face. She says, Bonnie, that assignment was amazing. I said, do tell. She said, you know what? I am nice. And I am thoughtful. And I am really creative. And I'm a really good problem solver. And I'm very honest. And I'm really loyal to my friends. And I'm a really good listener. And basically all she was doing was listing all the things that she noticed that she already innately always does. But she was putting attention on them. And this is the key. We feel, create, manifest, attract whatever we put our attention on. So now she's putting her attention on what was already there. And she said to me, she says, I always thought in order to feel more confident, that there was something I had to do or achieve or accomplish, win an award, get an accolade. She says, I could never really put my finger on what it was. She says, you know what I realized from this exercise? That what I was looking for, I already am.
Yes.
I just hadn't noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I tell that story, it makes me feel a little perplexed. And oftentimes it brings tears too, because ever since then, I've been sharing that with everybody that I talk to and work with as one of their homework assignments. Because it's true, we already are whole and complete and beautiful and caring and loving and empathetic, and we all have that in us. But we're not putting our attention on it. Again, you feel, you experience, you attract based on what you put your attention on. By doing this exercise, practice recognizing your own magnificence, now you're putting your attention on who you are and what you have to offer. And You're just seeing what's already there.
I love that, Bonnie. And I actually would love to share a little story about my own personal experience because I love to share my stories, my personal stories, because I was opposite end of the spectrum of where I am now. And I even looked much different than I do now. I was 45 pounds heavier, and it wasn't necessarily about the weight, but I was very unhealthy. And I didn't look at myself in a very healthy manner. In fact, I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself, nor did I have a good relationship with food, and I didn't have a very healthy relationship with the way that I expected other people to validate me. And
Mhm.
so as I went through this journey of self-discovery and self-love, I realized that whenever I just accepted myself for where I was and who I was at that time, that I didn't really acknowledge my greatness,
Mhm.
it was when my physical reality started to change, like my physical body started to change because I got more present with myself. I started to acknowledge myself for who I was and all the giftings that I currently had and always had within me. And I started to tune into my body so that I could take action every single day on the things that I needed to do that made me feel good internally. So I started to choose better foods.
Mhm.
I started to choose to nourish myself in a way that wasn't hurting me. And
Mhm.
so naturally, when I started to feel good internally, I started to think clearly. I started to think positive thoughts about myself and even about the experiences that I was having. Now, like Bonnie said, we are personal creators of our own reality. We literally are the architects of our life and our existence. So when we make choices every single day to just accept ourselves for who we are, so that on a second by second we can make healthier choices that are going to
Mhm.
give us the results that we're seeking naturally. And so it just starts to happen. The
Yeah.
weight starts to fall
Yeah.
off. You don't hold on to the emotions that
Yeah.
had you bogged down for so many years. You start to see yourself in a different light. And in return, people start to see it too. And then you start
Mhm.
the validation without even expecting it.
Yes. Very true. All of that. I love everything that you shared. And, it's definitely a journey. And I'm not saying that any of this is easy to do.
Oh,
But I will
absolutely.
tell you that the assignment of recognizing your own magnificence, I think, because you're noticing yourself and
Mhm.
you're noticing what's right about yourself, maybe it's a little bit easier than 5 times a day telling yourself what you love about yourself, because you're actually catching yourself, and that validates that truth and makes it more true and more real for you. I don't say do one or the over the other though, even though the second one's a little easier, because both of them are important for that reprogramming of the subconscious. Okay. Now, sometimes people will say, well, if I'm only focusing on what I love about myself and what's right, does that mean I can't notice if I do something I don't like or if I do something wrong? And the answer is no, but give yourself a rule. And the rule is when you do notice something you don't like, you're only allowed 2 minutes.
Yes.
2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, you're going to do something that is helpful, like change your thoughts or tell yourself that's over, it's gone, it's done, it's okay, I move forward. Or remind yourself that the thing that you're beating yourself up over, nobody else even noticed or cares, and let it go. Or shift to a new thought, like everything is okay, or if there was something negative that happened, everything always works out. But that's what you do in your 2 minutes. You're going to shift how you're thinking. And then when you're done with that 2 minutes, go back to, but what did I do right? So, like a good example, say you went on a job interview. And in that interview, you said 100 things that you loved. You were honest, you were funny, you were cordial, you connected with the person. Everything went great, except you said one thing you didn't like. You walk away, what do you focus on? The one thing, right?
Usually you focus on
Yeah, the
that.
one thing. So from now on, you have 2 minutes to say, wait a minute, when I walked away, he seemed pretty happy. So all this stuff I'm beating myself up over, they probably didn't even notice.
Mhm.
Let it go, focus on something positive, and then shift back to, but what did I do right? Oh yeah, I was really nice and I was really cordial and I was really responsive and I whatever. So again, it's what are you putting your attention on? What you put your attention on is what you bring to life.
Mhm.
So pay attention. What am I putting my attention on? The gal that I was sharing the story about, this is exactly what she said to me. She said, I thought I had to do something different. She said, the only thing I had to do was shift what I was focusing on because it was already there.
Mhm. Where focus goes, energy flows.
Mhm. Exactly. So now the other thing that I always recommend to help with your own self-love is to practice letting go of judgment of others.
Mhm.
Now, judgment of yourself kind of heals itself if you do the other two exercises that I shared. But letting go of judgment of others is really important in the process of loving yourself because it's relevant to how you feel about how you show up in this world. And, one of the things that I noticed is that the more I love myself, the less I judge.
Mhm.
And why? Because I don't need to anymore, for one reason. And for another reason, because when you love yourself, you see through a different filter than you do when you don't love yourself.
Yes.
When you love yourself, you notice what's right about somebody you meet, versus when you don't love yourself, you notice what's wrong about somebody you meet. So your filter changes. And so you see differently. And because you see differently, that judgment wanes away. So the more you love yourself, the less you'll judge. But you can go in the other way. The less you judge, the more you'll love yourself.
Mhm.
Because again, think about how you feel when, it's funny because we think, oh, if I judge, that's going to make me feel better about myself. No. Think about really notice how your body feels when you judge somebody. It's tight, it's tense, it's contracted versus when I give love. What's your body feel like? Okay, so you don't really feel better when you judge someone. It's pay attention to your body, you'll know, you'll see. So the question though is how do you stop judging in a world that's so full of judgment, right? So I have two things that I like to share. Number one, know that nothing anybody says or does is about you.
Mhm.
Nothing anybody says or does is about you. Everything that we do, we're all just walking around on this planet trying to feel happy, trying to feel fulfilled, trying to feel good about ourselves. That's what we're doing. Unfortunately, we don't always do it in really good ways.
Mhm.
So, for example, if someone's angry at you, it's not about you. It's about they didn't get something they want. And now they're using anger to hopefully make you feel bad so that you'll change and then they can get what they want. Their anger is not about you. It's about them wanting what they want and trying to use anger to get what they want. If somebody judges you, it's not about you. It's about the fact that they need to judge. And nothing you do is about anybody else. If you're the nicest person on the whole planet, it's not about the person you're being nice to. It's about the fact that you love being nice.
Absolutely.
And I found that really helpful in my own marriage because I remember one time being upset with my husband because he didn't show up a certain way. And I remembered, wait a minute, nothing anybody says or does is about you. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, that behavior is not about me. That's about him trying to make himself feel okay or feel good or protect himself or one of his strategies that we use in order to feel like we're enough or accomplished or whatever. It's not about me. And then I thought, you know what? My behavior right now, being upset about him, isn't about him. It's about me wanting what I want. And that that moment was like, oh yeah, so never mind, I'm not mad anymore. And that really helped. I've had a lot of people tell me that knowing that nothing anybody says or does is about them has made a huge difference in terms of judgment and in terms of just connection and relationship as well. And not taking things personally and not reacting and not becoming defensive. So know that nothing anything anybody says or does is about you.
Mhm.
It's about them, and it's about how they think and what program they're running and their past experiences and what they've been exposed to. And that's what it's all about. So if you know that nothing anybody says or does is about you, then it's easy not to judge. If
Mhm.
they're behaving nasty or angry or fearful or whatever it is, that's not about me. And so I don't have to take it personally, make it about me. And I don't have to insert myself either and judge them. And even if your judgment is about, the clothes they're wearing or, how much makeup they have on or whatever we judge people for, don't insert yourself. It's not about you. It's none of your business.
Mhm.
But if you choose not to judge in those moments when you catch yourself judging, you're going to feel a lot better about who you are and how you're showing up in this world. And so I call that seeing through the eyes of love and wisdom.
Mhm.
Seeing through the eyes of love and wisdom is knowing that everybody you meet is going through something, that they have something that's causing them pain, they're having something they're struggling through, and being compassionate and kind about it instead of making it about you and taking it personally. I'll tell you a story about this in a minute, but I noticed when I started loving myself and seeing through the eyes of love and wisdom that words like rude and lazy and selfish and inconsiderate disappeared from my vocabulary. And why? Why did they disappear? Not because I tried to make them disappear, but because when you love yourself, you see through a different filter.
Yes.
And so, like, I'll use the example of lazy. Say somebody years ago who I would say they're so lazy. And of course, that would be a big judgment and maybe even an attempt at a manipulation, right? But when you love yourself, that's not what you see. What you see is, oh, they're struggling. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they have anxiety. Maybe they feel like they can't do it. Maybe they're lacking in confidence. And you may not know, but at least that goes from judgment and manipulation to something that's more compassionate,
Right.
which is a shift in your energy, which is a shift in how you react and respond, and a shift in how you show up. Okay. So many years ago, I have two daughters. One of them is 32 and one of them is 34, almost 35, which blows my mind. I don't know how they got so old. But anyway, I'm going to say when my youngest was, I don't know, about 13, I took her to the hair salon. And when we walked in the door, there was like a nasty fest going on in the salon. Everybody was like really in a negative space. And the gal that was supposed to cut her hair, my daughter's hair, she was kind of at the hub of the wheel. And that was one of those moments where, like, I seriously remember making a shift in myself. And the shift was, okay, right now it would be so easy to say, what a B word, and walk out of here and judge her, or I could practice what I preach.
Mhm.
And I decided in that moment to practice what I preach. I said, okay, her behavior has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to insert myself. I don't need to make it about me, and I don't need to take it personally. And I'm going to see through the eyes of love and wisdom. She must be going through something. Now, just by thinking that, it sort of drove my next step. So I found myself walking up to her and saying, are you okay? And I said it from a place of love. And she said, tears. Thank you for asking. Actually, I'm not okay. I have a really bad back. I need surgery. My insurance doesn't cover it. I can't afford it. I'm a single mom. I have this beautiful 10-year-old little boy, but I have to pay the bills. And the only job that I know how to do where I'm making enough money, I'm on my feet all day. And I woke up this morning and I was in pain. And then I got here and everybody was being mean to me. Now, why do you think they were being mean to her?
everybody's on their own agenda. Everybody
Right.
just doesn't really understand.
Yeah. And whatever her vibration was like, being in fear, was coming off to them as nasty. And so they were being nasty back
Hmm.
because they didn't know that nothing anybody says or does is about me.
Hmm.
So I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wish I had a magic wand and could make it all better for you. And Rebecca was like, in that moment, not only did her energy shift, it was like the entire salon shifted. And she brought my daughter back to the hair wash bowl and gave her a free deep conditioning, which normally costs, I don't know, $12 extra or something. And she was as sweet as could be. The important point about all of this is it would have been so easy for me to judge and march out of there. But I
Absolutely.
made a choice. And guess how I felt about myself? Good,
Great.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt good about myself. And so you want to enhance your own self love, stop judging other people. Know that their behavior has nothing to do with you. See through the eyes of love and wisdom and see if you can see through a different filter and
Absolutely.
rather than judge. And, I always like to end this little story with if any of you have ever seen the cartoon, the old original version of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, in the end, the Grinch says, and his heart grew 3 sizes that day. And
Mm,
I love that little imagery. My heart grew 3 sizes that day about me, how I felt about how I chose to show up. And so every day, tell yourself what you love about yourself. Practice recognizing your own magnificence. Catch yourself in real time. And it doesn't have to be anything major. I mean, little things. Think about all the little things that we pick on ourselves about.
absolutely.
And here's the other thing that's important. Think about the energy you put into picking on yourself. Put at least, if not more, of that kind of energy into loving yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay. We find something, we pick on ourselves, we focus on it, and we can feel it in our body, and we're putting all this energy into it. Love yourself with that same amount of energy. Own it. Really own it. Sometimes the why part, if you say, I love myself because I am kind. Why am I kind? Because when somebody's struggling, I'm there for them, or I allow them to call me or reach out to me, and I am good at coming up with solutions. The more you can tell yourself those things and own it, the more powerful and real it becomes. And then no, nothing anybody says or does is about you. Don't take anything personally. It's not about you, which means that you don't judge, you don't react. You come from a place of compassion and you feel so much better about yourself. So those are kind of my tips for today on self-love, but here's the benefits. Because the only way we're going to do it is if we see the benefit, right? Because it's work. It's work to do this. So what's the benefit? Well, the benefit is you're more confident. The benefit is you're not afraid to do things or take risks. The benefit is you don't procrastinate anymore because why do we procrastinate? Because in our minds we're going, oh, this might be really hard. What if I can't do it? And we are better in relationships because we're not needy anymore. We don't
Yes.
pull at others for validation anymore. And so our relationships are better in that respect as well.
Mhm.
So there are so many things, you become more authentic in your relationships when you love yourself because you're not afraid to say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no. And so you don't have resentment in your life anymore. So many things to gain from loving yourself.
So much to gain. And you just gave so many nuggets of wisdom. And I'm so grateful of everything that you shared because I believe that we do have the capacity to find ourselves in the service of others and being able to, give love so freely, but we have to be able to give that to ourselves first and foremost, because oftentimes when we're doing it from an empty vessel or when we are still working through those areas. And I think that it's a constant evolution of finding ourselves, because as we continue to expand and grow, we're transforming and we're finding out things about ourselves that we never knew about ourselves, because there's so much depth that we have within us. We're a mind body soul connection, and therefore it creates a lot of complexity within our beings. So it's just a journey that we can have so much fun um, like navigating through, if we just allow ourselves to, and to just like accept ourselves in the process. And like Bonnie says, it's not, you know, an easy thing to embark in, especially if you've never really given yourself that time to it. Because I know that having a family and having children can really take away from that time. But if you just carve in a few minutes a day sometimes to just activate your own being, and recognize that if you don't show up for yourself first, you're not going to be able to have the space to show up for anyone. It doesn't matter how much someone is in need of you. If you don't have it, it's impossible to give it. So,
Well, can I speak to that for a second?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, because I have had a lot of people I've worked with over the years who say, but I do give to everybody else. But so, in other words, even though I don't love myself, I am giving and giving and giving. But I'll tell you what the difference is, because a lot of us are not clear on what the difference is. The difference is that kind of giving has conditions.
Yes.
That kind of giving is looking for some kind of a response. That kind of giving is tense when I don't get something in return. So that kind of giving feels resentful or overwhelmed at times. So yes, we can be givers when we don't love ourselves. And so you might, just by me clarifying this, have an aha moment. Because I have worked with so many people over the years and they're lovely and they are giving, but in the privacy of their own mind and in their own body, they're feeling resentful and they're feeling like, why am I not getting anything in return? So really, I think the expression should be changed a little bit too, instead of when you don't fill your own well, you have nothing to draw from, or when you don't love yourself, you can't give love in return. To when you don't love yourself, you can't give love without condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for correcting that, because it's very true. And we live in a society that can be very filled with conditions. And it's a process to learn the unconditional love, because it can be very superficial. And I am, through my journey, learning that every single day, how to love unconditionally. And so with this, I leave you with an Alan Cohen quote that says, to love yourself right now, just as you are, is to give yourself heaven. Don't wait until you die. If you wait, you die now. If you love, you live now. And that is when we really experience the opportunity to live heaven on earth every single day. So thank you so much to every person who is going to walk through these doors to listen in to this so needed conversation. It blessed me in so many ways. And my prayer is that it continues to bless you, and that you continue to love yourself, learning every single day, learning and unlearning just the benefits of unconditionally loving yourself and others along the way. Sending you so much love and light. Blessings.